the best way to start, I've just sort of done some last minute retweaking, but I thought maybe the best way to start is to show you the trailer for the film that I made for my PhD. It says interactive documentary, currently sort of reworking that aspect of it as well, but take a look at part of the trailer.
If you want to make a good film, you should use the new camera that has loads more features than the old one.
Oh, hello.
Not the old one. What if I decided to take the other option that nobody wants to take? The one that's easy going with the older camera, or even the older computer, the old mobile phone. This phone is a piece of shit. What if someone like me, someone who always goes for the newer option, someone who likes the way the new one works, what if someone like that gave up the new version? Fuck. And not just for the slightly older version, but the really old version. What if a digital motion picture maker gave up both digital and motion picture? What if they didn't use cameras at all? What if they gave up the internet too? For whatever was the old version of the internet? And their phone, their iPad, their MP3s, their CDs, the radio, newspapers. What if a life defined by the latest media and communication technology was pulled out of that world and sent back in time?
I might pause it there because I'm aware that we've only got 10 minutes. That's sort of the first part of the trailer to give you a bit of an introduction to what the film is sort of about. As part of my PhD, part of the journey turned into a documentary about myself giving up modern media and communication technology for a period of 80 days, a couple of links at the very end there. So using some older technologies, going back to the advent of photography, actually slightly beforehand. That's a bit of a background to what the documentary was about. The question that I'm sort of grasping at now, and was sort of left open by the PhD, was this idea of can a documentary filmmaker utilise evocative autoethnographic methods to communicate a cultural experience? In the PhD, I specified that I had the experiment, that I was capturing and documenting that experiment through autoethnographic processes, and that I was using that research to make a documentary film. I said to Anna before that I find it very appropriate that I'm positioned at this point of the day between the last session where we were starting to talk about these ideas of subjectivity and reality in documentary, and ethnography as well, because it's something that I find very interesting. I won't go into this side of things too much partly because you can't really read the text, unfortunately. But we also touched on it just before the break, this idea of reality in documentary. I'll read that out to you because it's difficult to read, I think. Haskell Wexler says that all documentary filmmakers, in one way or another, by the very selection of what lens they use, what time of day they shoot, what people are in the shot, what remains in the film, and what remains out of the film, it's all a creative process, and it is not, as some purists used to maintain, just recording reality. There is no reality. There's been lots of writing on either side of this argument. Another one that I found from Paul Wood more recently said, in all these attempts to adequately capture the meaning of documentary, there is still the same dilemma: how to deal with and understand something that quite clearly is attempting to represent reality or some part of reality, but as it does so, uses specific aesthetic devices. A common sense suggestion is that if the aesthetic somehow distort or change the reality being represented. This central issue has troubled documentary filmmakers and theorists, and has arguably had a debilitating effect on understanding documentaries. I think it's an issue that warrants talking about quite a lot. These are some of the films that I'm examining in my research at the moment. I think you'll be familiar with at least a couple of them. Walter Bashir, which we mentioned already today, Ari Folman's use of animation was quite controversial at the time of release. The Kid Stays in the Picture, a very interesting documentary from 2002, that use the parallax effect of animation to bring to life the images from Robert Evans's past. And stories we tell from a couple of years ago by Sarah Polly, her journey of uncovering her family's background, that uses some very creative devices there as well. I might skip over this one. Drawn from Memory is another interesting example to look at when you're looking at animated documentaries from 1995. That's sort of an animated memoir of sorts. The question arises, though, to what extent can subjectivity and evocative methods be used in documentary film practice while still communicating the realities inherent in a cultural experience? So I talked about Detour of the Superhighway, the film that I made for my PhD, looking at the development of technology, the experiment, the autoethnographic techniques to document that experiment, and the documentary film. These examples from the field and from my own creative practice, I think ultimately propose that the use of evocative autoethnography, that is the use of creative elements to communicate ethnography, can use these creative techniques such as animation, extensive filtering, recreation, and perhaps even satire to connect research to significant and shared cultural experiences. In Detour, for instance, there were several occasions in which an important occurrence took place but was left undocumented, being a very no-budget production. And I felt the need to portray these experiences. However, so that I could represent the findings of my research and the way that they connected up to my wider qualitative research activities as well. Russell says that autobiography becomes ethnographic at the point where the film or video maker understands his or her personal history to be implicated in larger social formations and historical processes. Identity is no longer a transcendental or essential self that is revealed, but a staging of subjectivity, a representation of the self as performance. I think the team might find that last point interesting as well. I found that without the autoethnographic research I conducted during this experiment, I would likely not have been able to make the film that I did make. And I wouldn't have been able to present the portrayals of my process when using those traditional photographic devices. Yet without presenting my work as a documentary film and utilising evocative methods in its production, I possibly would have been limited in how I might present those findings. So evocative autoethnography seeks to utilise creative processes in order to connect personal experiences with those of a larger culture. Ellis, 2004, for instance, states her preference for communicating ethnographic research in the same way that a novelist would tell a story. I'm fast running out of time, so I'm going to sum up the next few slides very briefly for you. There's this debate over evocative autoethnography and whether or not it is actually a valid form of research and presentation of research. Ellis finds that it's akin to writing a novel or creative writing. She says she thinks like a researcher, but the way that she wants to write as a creative writer, which she also is. Other theorists, such as Leon Anderson, say that the people like Carolyn Ellis and Arthur Bochner, who are proponents of evocative autoethnography, are at risk of making light of other more relevant forms of autoethnography. He champions a methodology he terms analytic autoethnography, which he says avoids overtly seeking narrative fidelity only to the researcher's subjective experience. That word subjectivity coming back together. So there is this debate that's very much, I think, still going on, and there being no definitive answers to. It's part of what I want to explore in my own research. Denzin is another one who's come to Ellis's defence there, saying that we're not in danger of forgetting our past. But I'm running out of time, so I'm going to show a very quick excerpt from my film to finish off, and then maybe we can discuss it afterwards.
Well, we didn't have a video camera, we did have a heap of recordable VHS tapes, and each of us had our own, and we could record whatever we wanted to on the short term on it. I remember being really confused by this concept and thought that just by changing the label on a movie, on a tape, that you would also change its contents. For quite a while, I thought that Patrick's movie had Marilyn Monroe and Jane Russell in it, dancing and singing in shiny red sequin dresses. This is my movie, I thought. I don't know how this technology works, but the machine has deemed that this is mine, and I'm totally okay with my movie having lots of dance numbers in it. I now feel that this story has foreshadowed my entire life.
Okay, I've gone a minute over, so I'll be quiet now. Thank you very much.